Hello, can you hear me? Let me. Hi, G. Can you hear me okay? Is the sound all right? And the picture's okay? We are live. Sounds fine. Great. Hi, Hobby. How you doing? Good morning. Figured now would be a good time to have an unplanned, irresponsible watch chat about whatever we feel like. Hey, Graham. Hi, Stephen. Yeah, I know, Hobby. It just I figured today was a good day. Last weekend was the Watch Time show. There's just been a big scandal with the Only Watch, which we were rejected from. So apparently they got to put it off for a year. Ours, we got all kinds of things we can yammer about. Views on different things. So anyway, hey Graham, how you doing? Good. I'm glad you can hear. I this this system almost insists on doing something strange, all right? Like having my Bluetooth headset as a input system. That's for output. Anyway, I got it all fixed and hammered down. So anyway, so let me ask you guys. First of all, any topic you want to talk about, as long as it's about watches. Anything on your mind right now that you'd like to chat about? There are several things I have, but I want to start with you guys. What do you think would be worth our our mutual discussion? Hi, Stephen. What watches did you see in the show that you want and are able to acquire? Great question. The answer is absolutely. Well, I saw a lot that I would love to have. The one that was near affordable, and I wouldn't want it anyway, that I had some time with, was this new one by, I think it's Charles Girard, is the name of it. And they're very nice watches. I tried one on, I looked at it. They have a Vaucher movement like that. But the price, I think, was a little much for the everything that's with that watch. I think they're banking a little too much on their connection with Gerald Genta and his design, and they only have one of his designs that they're using. So I don't know. We'll see how they do. But it was one of those watches when I first saw it. I didn't, So I tried it on and I liked it a lot better, but not $17,000. That's not to me. It wasn't a $17,000 watch. The one that I saw that totally blew me away was this new one by Vianney Halder. I had a great talk with him about my do-it-yourself residence. Showed him the pictures, and he dug it. So that made me happy. But and so he said, "Well, let me show you this," and then he handed me one of those system loops. It was like looking down to the top of a cathedral. I mean, those things are $100,000, $200,000 watches. So, but there was one other place that I went. I had a really good talk. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. With Christine Hutter at Moritz Grossman. When I don't have a good talk with her, it's usually because she's really busy. She's doing all kinds of stuff. She's really great with it. But I had a really excellent talk, and the thing that was interesting, and that's a watch I would like. I'll be on the lookout for something on the pre-owned market for Moritz Grossman. But so Stephen, that's pretty much it. Stuff I liked, I couldn't afford. Couldn't even afford to think about it. One of the trends that we're seeing more and more of is with their top. Well, there's two trends we're seeing. One trend is your top watchmakers like Audemars Piguet, like FP Journe, and a number of other ones. They're going to a brand boutique. Okay. In other words, they're getting rid of all of the ADs and so forth. Well, why are they getting rid of the ADs? Well, in terms of your basically markup and sales, when you create a watch, your whatever the production costs are, you multiply that by either 6 or 10. I've heard both. Okay. Sort of times 10 is an industry standard in a lot of other um, production items, but 6 with these, I think, just so that you don't run it out of some kind of range that anybody can afford. So if you see a watch for, let's say, $18,000, it should have cost about $3,000 to produce. All right. And that becomes a problem insofar as that in order for a watch company to stay in business, they have to do that. I mean, they've got marketing, sales, and yada, yada, yada. Okay. So one thing that they can cut back on is that when they sell it to an AD, the AD expects to get the watch at 50% of the retail price. And so he can sell it and then have the profit from it, which is reasonable. One of the things is that there's, people say, oh, well, they ought to cut it here and cut it there. Sometimes they can't. All right. And so one way of cutting cost is to have your own boutique. Now, you might say, well, that has other kinds of the brick and mortar cost and the employees and everything like that, which is true. But given the cut in the profit margin, it's worth it. So that's why a lot of them are going to that direction. The other trend that I've seen is more and more of them are going online. Now, why wouldn't they have adopted that a long time ago? I mean, it's like, what is it today? October 24th, 2023. Somebody has had to notice that that's a way to sell stuff. I mean, if anybody had bought stock in Amazon when their first IPO came out, they should be pretty wealthy right now. Okay. So, and they kept their stock. This stuff is worth a fortune. So you have these, I mean, so why didn't the watch companies wise up to that right away? Well, they have these ADs. I mean, like the AD would say, "Hey, wait a minute, here you are, you're somebody down the street can get it from you. And so why should they drive 100 miles to come to our boutique and yada, 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 and so forth." And I've heard some watch collectors talk about their ADs like they're semi-religious, priests for a brand. They're not. They're people in the business of selling stuff. And so I think what's happened is that you have some places where you have lots of people, but you don't have watch places, so to speak. I mean, in the U.S., for example, if you live in the New York or Boston area, you've got plenty of watches. Even Connecticut, little Connecticut, is has got a couple places that are extremely wealthy, but it's so close to New York they can go there. So you can get watches all you want in this area. But if you live out in, sort of, I don't know, Squash Dog, Mississippi, or someplace like that, where you don't have that, uh, then online you have the world. I mean, not just the U.S., but you have every place in Asia and Europe and every place, South America, North America, Canada, and so forth. So I think that what happened was that they finally said, well, guys, we're going to have it online. Now, a lot of people like to go into their AD and they like to pick up the watch and play with it and, see it. And that's fine. I haven't bought a watch in I don't know how long that I did that with. This one I got from Federico because he had made some deal with Urban Jurgensen. Urban Jurgensen is sold to Kari Voutilainen, which I was supposed to find out about and was unable to find out what I wanted. He was quite busy at the Watch Time show, but I did mention the fact that we were using his Comblamine and his what was it the case making Voutilainen and Catton case makers. So anyway, I mean, so I think that you have that if you go to if you want a Voutilainen, you go there and you get on a waiting list. You don't buy watches anymore from certain places. Same thing with FP Journe. Even now with H. Moser, Parmigiani for the first time, a lot of these have waiting lists, and so they figure, okay, so you got these things. So they feel that, well, we've made this sale, so why should we put in unless they have an AD? But if they have a boutique, there is no cut. I mean, the AD, the sort of the boutique is the one that's taking care of it. So that's a trend. Okay, let's see what you guys have. Hey, Brian, how you doing? Tuna, good to see you. Least time, how are you? Hi, Wayne. Christopher Ward does 3 times. Yeah, Christopher Ward is on the Bel Canto. That thing had a waiting list too. Hi, the Hork? I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm going to call you Jorg. Jorg? How's that sound? I've been thinking of making a custom watch lately, a reversible dress piece with 2 ultra-thin Frederick-Breguet caliber 21 movement. Should allow for a sub 10 millimeters thick reversible watch. Oh, that sounds like a project. I don't know if you're doing it for a business or you're doing it like me because I'm a pretentious watchmaker. But yeah, those things. I think those things are really great. By the way, too, let me add something. I think everybody, all watch collectors, should pony up a few bucks and buy the parts and make their own watch. There are lots of really good how-to things. There's this one guy named Mark Lovick, I think, or something like that. He's an English watchmaker, and he's in there. He shows you how to do it. He's got a thing. I have a link to it on Pretentious Watchmakers. But the thing about it is you learn a lot of stuff. What I've learned is I really need a watchmaker. When I had to take the balance wheels off when I was having these watches cut back, and let me see. I'll break another one. Right here, you can see how it was cut like that. Well, in order to do that, I had to take off the balance. In fact, take off the whole balance cock and the balance spring and the balance wheel, and everything comes off and so forth. And I just um, I'd rather do it with an inexpensive Chinese clone of a 6498 than go than pay for a 6498 or some more expensive one. And the thing of it is, it worked. Um, V&E Halter looked at it and said, "Yeah, it works." I had the video of it anyway. Um, so I think it's you just learn about stuff. It's a cheap way if you're waiting on a waiting list for 5 years for a watch. You got to do something, and it's a lot cheaper than going out and paying 5 or 6 $1,000 for a watch. Okay, so there you go on that. Hey, lease time and rent for boutique space is a direct tax deductible. Good point, lease time. I mean, obviously the bean counters come in and they're important, but also beyond the bean counters, look at the markets you open up when you go online. I mean, you're worldwide. Um, there's it's rough. I mean, now if you're selling cookies, then you want to have a shop and people can come in and buy your fresh cookies from you. But even so, you could get Famous Amos cookies or something like that online. Everything, the world is gone there pretty much. Hey, Blake, how you doing, man? Hey, wearing a mask, how you doing? Good to see you. What are your thoughts on De Bethune? Well, two thoughts. One, they're great watches. Two, I can't afford them. But they are nice. I mean, you have certain watchmakers. There's a handful of them, and there are two things about them, and they're the same two things. They have great horology and really high prices. There are very few of those who are truly of that caliber, of that nature, that you can find. There are few, if you go looking in the right sort of hidey hole, and it's online too. You can find ones that aren't that brand, but sort of like trying to find a movement that's really a top movement, like that Jaeger-LeCoultre movement in the Ralph Lauren watch, that kind of thing. But yeah, the De Bethune is really a sweet one. Oh, great, Horg. Hope that's right. Hey, Blake Star, how you doing? Please put me on your inheritance. I got I got 5 grandkids who are already lining up and giving me slow working poison. No, they're not. They're great. Frederick Piguet belts at 18,000. There you go. It's funny. I got my Fabergé watch has a Frederick Piguet. I think it's an 1150, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's the caliber of it. And most of those are 3 hertz. The one I got was 4 hertz. And so I was thought, oh, what's going on with that? And Egon, he's one of the smart watchmakers in our group. He said, "Well, they simply tuned it to that," and so I looked at finally found it, and sure enough, that's what had happened. But I do like the lower frequencies. I don't know. Somehow this is in my mind, and I know it's not perfectly true, but close enough. If you have a watch that's tuned to the lower frequency, you're going to have some finer workmanship in there to make sure it's working right. If nothing else, you got to have it, tested to more positions. Like this one's 3 hertz, and most of my other ones are 3 or 2.5 hertz as well. But you're right, boy. I love those low. Yeah. The other ones, they're treat them like they're treating the movements like they beat a rented mule. But that's my thing, and I have all of my prejudices, so treat them that way. Can find a caliber 20 run around 400 USD. not super expensive. That isn't bad. That really isn't bad at all. Hi, Rich. How you doing, man? Did Bethune just do what they like? Yeah, they do. I think you have very few watchmakers that can do it. Uh, if they're a good watchmaker, they can make what they feel like. Who are those two young guys? Pettyman and I think Peterman and somebody, a couple of young guys. They make these dynamite watches. Same thing with that young French watchmaker. They just make these beautiful, gorgeous watches. They sell them for 30, 50,000 bucks, and they got a line out the door waiting for them to make more. So those guys, I think, they're really important, I think. And then you have all of these different people trying to be involved in the business one way or the other and make a profit. And that's okay. I mean, if you're going to have a business, you better make a profit. As they say, no one ever went broke making a profit. And those, then you got this sort of a groups like Larique who got together and try to do the same thing, except, I mean, to get a really top-notch watch and parts simply by a group cooperative thing. Do De Bethune use silicone hairsprings? I don't know. It's really funny. There's certain things that I think of all people, I think it may have been not Zenith, but possibly Zenith, but somebody else. Who was it? Not Ulysse Nardine. Ulysse Nardine has this butterfly escapement or something like that. And it's all of this stuff is made out of silicon. It's a little different. That's sort of like, that's an interesting kind of thing. To me, silicon hairsprings really comes down to a very basic choice. And all of the top independent watchmakers that I've talked to, no, they don't care for it. They don't want it in their watches. They want, most of them have Strawman hairsprings, the ones that are made by Precision Engineering from H. Moser. But, I'm not gonna fight it. I mean, it's like there's a reason they put them in there, but I mean, to me, it's sort of really people say, "Oh, it's an advancement." No, it's not. It's a retrograde. It's going back to quartz watches. Quartz watches have worked much better than mechanical watches forever. Okay, they're more accurate and everything else that you'd want in an accurate watch. And the reason they put in silicone hairsprings, there's two reasons. One, they don't want to talk about too much, but the other one they do. First of all, the advantages of a silicone hairspring are well known. All right, they're non-magnetic. They don't expand and contract with heat and cold like transition metals do, and pretty much once you set them up, you don't have to mess with them. And then, of course, then they like to brag about their free-sprung balances. Well, they don't have a choice. If they put in a regulator, as soon as they try to change the shape of the hairspring, it's brittle. It'd break. But that, to me, really, I mean, if you want an accurate watch, get an Apple Watch. Those things are accurate. I think they're tied into some atomic clock inside of a mountain. But if you're okay with a sort of a ersatz mechanical watch, then go ahead. And there's and the same thing with these sky high frequencies. He says, "Oh, I want to have higher and higher frequencies for better accuracy." It will never, ever, ever, ever get to the point that quartz has. Quartz got something like 32,000 hertz, not not semi oscillations per hour, but hertz. Okay, sky high. Agonord never make use of silicon hairspring. Also, too, they're cheaper. Now they like to say, well, they're more expensive. They're not more expensive. They come out on these silicon sheets, and you punch them out and you pop them in. They're much easier. You take a look at what you have to do for a silicon hairspring. I mean, not a silicon, but a one made of transitional metal, like the ones both parachrome from um, Rolex and the Strassman hairspring from Precision Engineering. Those things, they're not easy and they're more expensive to produce. So that they sort of imply that. Now, maybe it did cost them, I have no doubt about that, it cost them a lot of money to develop it. Okay, because you got everything working and so forth. Yes, I'm sure the development costs were not cheap, and that's why Patek Philippe and um, Swatch and Rolex went in on it together. Okay, enough about that. Okay, what do you guys have? Uh, yeah. Hey, Hater. Yeah. Thanks, Hater. That's who I was talking about. Peterman Bidat. Those two guys, young guys, they make these gorgeous watches. They don't make a lot of them. And I think somebody just said, here's some people doing what they want. And if you can do it and stay in business, why not? On the other hand, what happens is somebody says, well, I bet if we made more, we could make more money, especially if they get early on, they get a waiting list. Sometimes that works, sometimes not so much. Blake Starr, Watchbox and Luxury Bazaar are one of the worst gray market dealers in the world. They mark up their used watches by at least 40% market manipulation. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of market manipulation, but we have that power too. By our collective decisions, we can, believe me, we can change the market. We don't want to put up with something like that, Blake. I mean, people act like we're sort of young, innocent little doves. We're not. We're as one of the worst things I ever did was I convinced the salesman that when I got my FP Journe Chronomet resonance, it had the brass plates. Well, it turns out that the brass plates were relatively rare compared to the gold plates. One of the few times ever that brass was more valuable than gold, at least in a watch. So mine was from 2002. They didn't put gold in until 2005. I mean, FP Journe didn't. So I told him, well, mine was brass and not gold, and so he shouldn't charge me as much, and he didn't. I'm rotten to the core when it comes to wheeling and dealing. But it's not. These guys make a profit, okay? So no harm. They just don't make as much as they'd like. Hey, Finnegan the Ninja, how you doing, man? Oh, thanks. What do you think of Vostok? I think they're affordable and interesting. That's about all I can say. I have a pole jet. The thing works. That's all I can say about it. It just works and keeps working. Every now and then I'll take it out, wind it up, and it goes around and has an alarm on it. Now my hearing shot. I mean, this isn't anything new. I got messed up when I was very young. Messed up my hearing. Got hit by a steel ship's door. And so it messed up my hearing. So anyway, I didn't realize it, except I live in a quieter world than most people. So when it comes to alarms, I don't hear them. I mean, it's sort of fun. Then my wife makes me wear my hearing aids so she can give me instructions. Anyway, that's so. But why spend a lot of an alarm? This is why I wouldn't buy a bel canto, not because I don't think they're cool, because I think they're very cool. I just couldn't hear one. They need something to sound a Big Ben for me to hear it. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. uh, oh, the Freak Watch. Yeah, well, the Freak Watch I think is interesting in two ways. One, you wind it with the bezel. There's one by Moritz Grossmann, one of the Tefnut watches. You wind it by the bar lug at the bottom. It was sort of cool. I think the biggest draw of silicon is that there's reduced maintenance. Yeah, all of those things. Exactly. Just like a quartz watch. Super duper. Cheaper. Cheaper to maintain. Cheaper all the way around. Get your cheap watch. get a silicon haircut. Be my guest. The good thing is that there are better ones that are left for the rest of us. Mechanical all the way. Who needs accuracy? Yeah, exactly, Blake. Blake, yeah. Who needs accuracy? We use our cell phones to set our watch. I don't care what kind of, whether you got silicone or silly putty in there. you know, we use our, we got our iPhones. Hey, Ola G, I feel the same way about silicone hairsprings as about Audemars. The whole idea of code line was evolution, but they went on from artisan hard turned guilloche to machine made. Yeah. 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 Innocent dub. Then we get into the watchmas and then we become the soiled dubs. Hey, Grumbling Foresight, how you doing? Good to see a live stream pops out just at the right time after coming home from work. 10:30 p.m. here. Wow, where are you? 10:30. Let's see, 11:30. Wow, you must be way east of here. We need to support local artisans. I have a local shoemaker, tailor, and watchmaker that I've been going to since I was 20. I agree with that, Blake, for two reasons. One, it's more convenient, but two, it's sort of like how they're going to survive. Uh, that is a problem, though. Getting what most watchmakers too is that, and this is sort of another kind of problem. They can't get the parts. I mean, you take Rolex. You go to a guy who's not a verified, you know, Rolex watchmaker, and he can't get the parts. You got to be one of the sainted ones, I guess. I think it's important to have that. Mine disappeared. I think he may have not made it through the pandemic. He was like 84 years old. He was like the guy in the rock opera Tommy, the deaf dumb blind kid who is a pinball player. Okay, and he played by sense of touch and feel. That would be deaf dumb blind. This guy. He didn't speak English very much. He's mainly Portuguese. Just the coolest guy. And I'd go in with a watch and he'd look at it. He didn't have a time grapher, and he would set the thing so it was perfect. I don't know how he did it. So I figured he's like the deaf dumb blind kid. He does it by sense of touch and feel. You feel the vibration. It's just right. Set my watches, and I'd go off with my watch. Unfortunately, the whole company, the jeweler that he used to work at, I think he was like one of their uh, grandfathers or something, and he had a little thing in the back, and I'd go in there and he'd do stuff. He had a whole pile of, I mean, everybody brought their watches to him. So I don't know what happened to him. I went there and the place was closed and we're out of business. That happened to a lot of places during the pandemic. They just disappeared on us. So okay. A Soviet watch in my collection. Yeah, I'm I'm pro watch. I can't say I'm very pro Soviet, especially right now. Hey, David, how you doing, man? Of the constant force devices I know, the Fusi, Remontoir, and dual mainsprings, are there any others to be used? Good question, Finnegan. Yeah, um, let's see. The Fusian chain, actually, the resonance is one for that. Let me see. Did you have that in your list? Uh, the Remontoir. Okay. Yeah, the dual mainsprings like this, but another one is the dual barrels in parallel, because what they do is that they work simultaneously for so that there isn't as much pressure or work for a single barrel. This is what Etienne Schwartz has. They have this one model that has that's like near affordable. The one I have, the FP Jorn um, Konomatsu Vein has it, but those things that they went crazy expensive, and they're out of reach, and they're out of stock, and out of everything else. Things are not easy along those lines. But I think that that would be one that would be a neat one to any watch that has a double barrel in parallel. I think it'd be a neat one for constant force. Grumbling foresight. Indonesia, holy smoke. Almost exactly the opposite side of the globe. Oh, yeah, it'd be 11. Yeah, 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. Hey, Hater, there's a great article about the subject of silicone watches at Wordar, the CEO of Patek, Jean-Marc, and Nicholas of Agenor, among others. It was written by Andre Smoga, if anyone's interested. Well, you know I'm interested, Hater. Do you have the link for it? Could you put that down here? I'd like to see it. I have, I I'm sure that to me, Patek Philippe, I don't know what I have no idea. I think I somehow they sort of slid off as far as interesting watches on my own radar. The watches that they made before and have available before 2009, when they started stuffing silicon hairsprings in those really beautiful watches, um, those things are still, to me, very valuable. One of the easiest things you can do to find out which ones are and which ones aren't silicon infused is whether or not they have the Geneva seal. The old ones have a Geneva seal, but Geneva Seal Foundation said no dice if you're going to put in silicon hairsprings. Now, they did that for a reason, and a lot of people seem to overlook that. Well, Patek Philippe comes out with it. Well, we got our own thing, which to me is almost ludicrous. I mean, it's like, the the good housekeeping seal means you've done something right, or some kind of electrical standard, but to give yourself your own, you know, I tell you what I think they ought to do is they ought to take it off. I mean, Patek Philippe has got a reputation; doesn't need a seal, or as they said in we don't need no stinking botches. Let's see. Yeah, well, Blake, they don't want to open up their parts department because uh, I sent in my both my Parmigiani and both of my FP Jorns, and they're expensive service on them. If they pan them out to everybody, now what their claim is that somebody who's all thumbs is going to mess it up. Another interesting thing too, some articles I read by watchmakers, and they just love ETA because they can get parts for it. Same with Solita. So there's sort of that other issue too. But if I want to get my really good watch service, I mean, like, I, it's I don't know how many watchmakers in the world could actually service a resonance watch. I wouldn't trust any other than FP Journe. So, so I pay out the nose for it. It's not cheap. A couple $1,000 per visit. Hey, football fan. Yeah, me too. We can bring out our crying towels. As a Charger fan and as a Redskins, or not Redskins, oops, as a Commander. God, they could have come up with another name. Speaking of accuracy, my 1-month-old Black Bay Pro just gave me a +3 in the first 30 days of ownership. Maybe I'm just lucky. No, I tell you, there's something about Tudor I've always liked. They used to have ETA movements, not a problem. They didn't tell you that was a problem, but they had ETA movements, and then they started getting their own movements. Senesi, I think, Finesi. They have there's a factory they've got. Forgot where it is, but there's two buildings. One's gray and one's red. The red one is for making parts for Tudor, and the other one it's owned in part by Chanel, but it's pretty much Finesci. Is that the name of the company that makes the watch parts and so forth for them? They own it, and so I think they're the ones. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. Oh, okay. Hater, put it on on WhatsApp. That'd be cool. Thanks. What is the point of a bumper automatic? As in, why was the rotation limited only part rotation? I've done a fair bit of reading and can't work it out. I don't know what a bumper automatic. You mean like the Hammermatic on the Moritz Grossmann? I love the Hammermatic, by the way. But is that what you mean by a bumper automatic, Finnegan? Hey, Blake, you got an opinion? I had a Calatrava for years and loved that little watch. It was always wonderful, but it was always too little. And I was told it was very delicate, and I got nervous wearing it, so I finally sold it. Hi, Tommy Viola, Patek Philippe, and their own seal. Yeah, I gotta have a Bill seal on me. I gotta put a big seal. This is approved by Bill. Actually, try to convince my wife. Grumbling Foresight. Speaking of double barrel movement, would anyone happen to know if Omega's application relates to making the power delivery more consistent? Most YT reviewers says they're to extend power reserve. Well, if you have double hairsprings, not double hairspring, double barrels, there are really only two types: serial and parallel. The serial are simple. When one's finished, the other one takes over. That'll extend the length of the charge for you. You take the Powermatic 80, for example, and that's 80 hours. And the reason it's for 80 hours is that they cut down the frequency from 4 to 3 hertz, and that also extended the. I don't know if they have dual barrels or not, but that's sort of a funny movement I like. They have 3 different types, one of which has a silicon hairspring and the other ones don't. It's like they're doing you a favor by putting a silicon hairspring in. Why not just put in a quartz? That'll work even better. Hi, Mr. Blue Catone. How you doing, man? Kinnessy, thank you. That's exactly right. That's who I was thinking of. Blake Vacheron, Breguet, JLC, Beauvais, and Moser are probably one of the best finished watches with beautiful designs. I couldn't agree more. Vacheron Constantin they have this watch that's named after a number of famous explorers like Vasco da Gama and so forth. And those watches have retrograde. They have the coolest looking watches. Unfortunately, they cost a fortune. But yeah, they got some designs. Beauvais designs, they're sweet. My wife took her Beauvais to the Watch Time show and was showing it to people, and they had a guilloche on mother of pearl with serpentine hands. You're right. They make really nice ones. So does Moser. Yeah, Moser's very. There's two kinds of things. Well, three kinds. You have the streamliner, then you have sort of what I'll call the traditional Mosers, which are often minimalist, and then you have the heritage. I love the heritage. Well, in fact, I like all three of them. Hey, killer audiophile. Tudor needs to start doing more open case back pieces. I don't recall seeing any. Ooh, good point. I don't know. I don't claim to know them that well. I always thought they had that, but I guess not. One of the big things, it's almost like a fetish with Rolex, is that their oyster. They want it to be super waterproof, so it's their oyster clam. With if you put in a exhibition window in the back, they put one out. What they came out with, their new one, what's it called, 1911 or something like that. That's a beautiful watch, and they flip it over, and they have a thing, but then they put in silicone. Even sillier, Fabergé. I have this wonderful Fabergé watch with a Frederic Piguet movement, but it's not so much the Frederic Piguet movement, but they put this imperial eagle for a rotor on a really amazing thing. But then they put a solid case back. So why bother? You could have a hamster on a running wheel to wind the thing. If you're going to put in a solid case back, but if you're going to do all of this extra stuff on that thing, that's funny. I don't know. They don't ask me. Is there a seal on A Longa Unsunda? There may be. I don't know if they're German seals or not. Now, another thing, too, about the Geneva seal, it's only in the canton of Geneva. That's why so few watches have it. F.P. Journe, whose whole operation is right downtown Geneva, he has, and they made a big deal about made in Switzerland. You have to have so many things on it. So his says made in Geneva, and he wouldn't deign to let the grubby hands of Geneva seal on his watches. That's a trip, but he wouldn't have any. I don't have a problem getting them if he wanted it. Tommy, Leola, there may be a German seal. Check that out. I mean, if you just, see if there's a German watch seal. And I think there is, but I don't know the name of it. Boy, I'd like to see that bumper, Blake. I'm going to look that up. It was from the 50s. Okay. Maybe those bumper movements found on vintage Omegas. Okay, that I'd like to see. Maybe they are the same thing as the Hammermatic on the Moritz Grossman. Those aren't too popular either, but there's a difference between popularity among the lumpen proletariat of watch buyers versus the collectors. I think for collectors, those kinds of things, at least to me it is, my kind of collector, those things are any kind of unique mechanical watch element is interesting, and that's one of them. Okay, I'll take a look at those. Hi, Ralpho, the bill seal. Okay, roll. Only Bill gets the bill seal. My wife would take it away from me. No bill seal for you. Hey, Finnegan, the first automatic wristwatch was a Harwood with a bumper automatic, too. Hey, Forbin, Jaeger-LeCoultre made of bumpers in the 50s also. They were smaller movements in keeping with the 33 millimeters. Boy, this is all news to me. This is interesting stuff. Take one of Cartier's MC divers. If the accuracy isn't perhaps important, this watch runs on quartz level. Hmm. Double barrel. Okay. Mr. Blue. Last Thursday at Topper's Burlingame, California, I had the chance to try a new Singer Reimagined 1969. Is that the one with the Agengraph uh, chronograph movement in it? Rolex, yeah, Rolex 1908. That's it. I believe it looks nice. Not sure if it's worth what they're going for, especially given that they're skimping out a little. Yeah, I think I thought I really liked that until I found out that they put silicon in it. I wonder if they put it in. It may have been like uh, Rolex has never had much luck with dress watches. Even though their Cellini line I thought was very nice, um, but they just haven't had much luck for it. And this was sort of like a dress watch with a sporty design to it, the 1908. And I thought, man, they really hit the sweet spot with that one. But then as soon as I found out that they put in that silicone hairspring, my question was why? They had it in their women's watches, in the Pearl Master or whatever they called it. But all of the rest, they kept the parachrome hairspring in all of the other men's watches. I have no idea why they did that. But, if you're not a collector and you really don't care about a lot of other things, you know, if you get a smartwatch, it doesn't. All of these other kinds of things don't make sense. My wife has this giant, big old smartwatch with the Hermes version with a picture of a horsey on it. That thing, she wears that all the time. It tells her what I'm doing. I think there's an app on it that's called Spy on Your Husband. She keeps track of what I'm up to. Uh, Jorg, there is glass entity origin compliance. Yeah, nothing by none of the German watches could have a German Geneva seal. In fact, any watches made outside of Geneva couldn't. Audemars Piguet couldn't have one. Jaeger-LeCoultre couldn't have one. I think Jaeger-LeCoultre is made outside of that. Then there's the whole thing about I don't. What bothers me isn't the decisions by sort of the watchmakers. It's the people who own the watchmakers. You have Richemont, and thank God Richemont hasn't jumped in with the silicon. It doesn't mean they're not going to do it. If they figure out there's a way to squeeze another buck out of it, they probably will. But decisions like these brigades, gorgeous brigades. Here they have a brigade that looked like Abraham Brigade made it, and they put silicone hairspring in that. Are in you speaking of the Glashütte original, they have this wonderful one with the I think it's called the inverse, and they have this sort of these double regulators, one for the beat and one for the frequency. It doesn't make sense to have those functioning if you got a silicone hairspring in because you can't adjust either one. So I think they had to leave the one made of transition metals in there. I don't know, but I mean, Breguet Breguet's really sort of renaissance began back in I think it was in the 80s with when the Chaumet brothers bought it and hired Daniel Roth, and then he comes up with some great things. You know, another guy who did some stuff with him was Michel Parmigiani. He also did some things with those brigades before they were sort of bought by somebody else after the Chomet brothers almost went to jail. Yeah, it's a feature-driven design. What are your thoughts on Jacob and Company? I love the innovation in the movement and mechanism, especially the twin turbo and automata, astronomia, but I can't stand how their case. Well, I don't know. Jacob the jeweler, who is the guy who's behind it, I I sort of I too much see him as an opportunist rather than a dedicated watchmaker. There's certain crowds that like his stuff. One of whom got him into a lot of trouble because they were dope dealers, and poor old Jacob the jeweler had to spend some time in prison. And when he got out, he made some deals with some Swiss watchmakers, but I don't know you know if they're all that. To tell you the truth, um, I guess I think his stuff is more bling than substance. That's my opinion, but I could be wrong. Now, what do I know, right? Hey, hater, there's a Fleurier. Oh, that's it. Yeah, Fleurier quality. That thing is very important. The Fleurier QF quality Fleurier. There's a Parmigiani QF version that's a little pricier. You can find one of the older one of those at a good buy. That would be a nice watch. You're right, hater. Could the bumpers basically stoppers stop the rotor from rotating a full 360 related to the fact that those vintage movements didn't have bidirectional winding? I don't know. I've heard some things, a lot of really bad things about bidirectional. Uh, I'm not a great fan. I have some automatics, but most of my watches that I like are hand wound. Why hand wound? Well, if you get if you look at what's his name, Daniel George Daniels, there's too many Daniels. George Daniels' book Watchmaking. All of those watches are key wound, and George Daniels is a funny character. In part of that book, he's grumbling. Well, something like, oh, they don't have a key one because they're afraid of losing the key. And he's like, well, if you can't keep track of your key, you don't deserve to have a good watch. And the reason for wanting a key wound, you take all the keyless works out, and so you've got more of just pure watch driving in there. So I understand that. I have one and broke it. So, so much for that. I'll get another one and try it again. So anyway, I maybe the bumpers aren't like the Hammermatic. The Hammermatic is simply like a it's more like what Bel Canto has. Is they have a gong, except this is a hammer back and forth. Thor's hammer, maybe. Who knows? Jacob are outsourced to this studio weird designs and their functionality sucks. Plus, does a Jacob and Company watch come come an eight ball? Comes with an eight ball. Hey, football fan, Omega used to have a bumper winder years ago. It's like a rotor restricted between 10 and 2 o'clock. Oh, okay. So it's I see what it is now. It's something though. They could have. I think the same kind of thing would be more like a balance wheel. Balance wheels have about a 260-degree arc when they're going back and forth. Um, I don't know. I'll have to find out more about it though. It's like a rotor restricted with it. Okay, guys. Well, listen. I I've got to go. Time for me to go. When I have these unannounced ones, I like being able to talk about whatever we feel like. And so, anyway, take care, enjoy watches, and till next time.